Welcome to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood.
A podcast sponsored by California Rainbow.
Founded in 1922, Rainbow is a premier service organization for young girls ages 8 to 21. In California, we have approximately 60 assemblies.
These young leaders learn the importance of serving others and gaining lifelong sisterhood. Learn more at go.ca-rainbow.org.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk About Leadership, Sisterhood, and Service podcast, a California IRG production. I'm Jody Anders, your facilitator, and today we're going to talk about supporting nonprofit organizations with two of our former state leaders, 2016 Grand Worthy Advisor Colleen Penaluna and 1991 Grand Worthy Advisor Paula Claiborne. These ladies led the entire state of California at the tender ages of 18 and 19 and had the unique experiences of picking a nonprofit organization for the entire state to support throughout their year. We're joined today by our host, member Brianna. Let's get to it. Brianna, do you have some questions for our guests?
I do. So the first question is, what is our grand service project for this year? And what is a grand service project?
I can hop in and answer, unless Paula wants to. I know a grand service project this year is Positive Teams. They're an organization based out of San Diego, and they help support service dogs, training the service dogs, matching them with their person that they're going to be assisting and loving and living with. And really what a grand service project is a project that the entire state of California Rainbow is raising money for and supporting together throughout the year. So annually it changes. Every year we have a new corps of state officers that get appointed, and the state president or Grand Worthy Advisor gets to choose what that annual project will be. And then sort of as a whole state, we get to work together to raise money and engage with that project. Every local assembly is often doing projects in their own local community too, but it's really cool to have kind of a singular project that everyone also is connected together to work towards.
So the second question is, how does California Rainbow choose the grand service project?
Colleen, do you want to talk about your experience first?
No, I actually am really excited to hear your experience first, because I'm curious how it's changed kind of like over the years.
Same. So back in 1990, when I was first appointed, and I think I was still in a bit of that trying to understand what has just happened to my lifetime. And I was presented with three nonprofits that were in the Southern California, predominantly Southern California area, that had been recommended by current members. I actually happened to know after the fact the person who submitted the project I ended up selecting. And so each of the programs, back then it was VHS. And so I had a VHS tape and kind of a fact sheet to review that talked about the mission of the organization, the population that it served, kind of its core values and what their objectives were, what impact they were trying to have on the community. I cannot tell you the other two. I know they were worthy causes. However, the Ahead with Horses program that I chose really stood out because it impacted, number one, children. It had a direct impact from its equine therapy. So it really just stood out to me as a small, single operating location for children who have developmental disabilities. At that time, it was very much physical disabilities. And then after all of these many years, more than 50 years now that they've been around, they have children who have all levels of the spectrum of autism, children who are just nonverbal, either have hearing impairment, but still physical disabilities. It just really struck me that it was a direct service impact, but I had three to choose from, and I didn't have to, in those days, we didn't have Google. So it really kind of helped me narrow the focus and very quickly realize what kind of made a big appeal to me was the direct impact on kids. Colleen, I'd love to hear how it's changed.
It's definitely changed. I I could be a little bit wrong. I believe by like the earlier 2000s, maybe 2010s, I know there was like a binder I kind of heard rumors about that had like kind of like pre-approved projects that the Grammarly advisor could flip through. And if anything spoke to her, she could choose it, but I don't think she was like tied specifically to that binder. By the time I was appointed in 2016, obviously we like had the internet. So it was pretty easy to hop online. I used a website called Charity Navigator that already kind of rates and reviews nonprofits for how transparent they are and if they're filing their tax returns correctly, all that kind of behind the scenes stuff that you don't really think about when you're like 18. You don't really think about like what a 501c3 is. For me, it was exciting because I was told to pick three and rank them by like my first choice, second choice, third choice, because sometimes your first choice doesn't work out if it doesn't get approved for those tax reasons and whatnot. And to provide kind of just a little quick personal statement on why I was choosing it. My adult mentor at that time, Mrs. Regier, was really adamant that she wanted it to be something I was personally passionate about, because when you are personally invested and interested in the project, that kind of helps carry you through your year. You have to be really excited and you're talking about this project all the time and giving speeches on it. You want to be invested in it. And then hopefully your membership is going to pick up on that interest. And the vibe will be good and everyone will work together to raise money. That's the goal. So for me, my best friend, when we were 16, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So she didn't want anyone at our school to know. So it was really just our little group of like 6 to 7 like girls, our little clique, who knew what was going on. So I really saw firsthand what she was going through and how she really needed a lot of more emotional support, in addition to some of that physical support for, all the chemotherapy and surgery she was going through as well. So when it came time to pick my service project, it was kind of a no-brainer to look for something that would support ovarian cancer patients. And surprisingly, there was a very limited selection. There isn't a lot of networks out there to really support ovarian cancer patients and their families and everything that they're going through when they're fighting that cancer diagnosis. But I was able to find one that's in the Bay Area Cancer Connections, and they are a brilliant nonprofit that's supporting people with breast and ovarian cancer and their families. And it's an incredible service that they're offering between the emotional support, but they offer a lot of practical support and medical support as well. So as soon as I heard about them, I just knew that had to work out or I would be heartbroken, because there was really nothing else that spoke to me as deeply as that did. And luckily it did work out and we were able to support them throughout my year.
I have to say, I remember that entire year. I don't think I knew teal was the color for ovarian cancer until your project was chosen. And then we had like the little bracelets, and it was such an impact on me even during your year. Like teal was like this thing I still remember in my mind.
Yeah, I remember my assembly for our reception, which every state officer gets sort of like a little party to honor her work through the year. And so for mine, my assembly made for the like little pin-on corsages, it was pink and teal ribbons for breast and ovarian cancer. And then for my pin, my past Grammarly advisor pin, my parents designed it, and it's the cancer ribbon, and half of it's pink and half of it's teal. And it's the most precious thing I own. If my house was on fire, it's like the one thing I would save, besides like my dog and my like living human family members too.
So our third question is, what is the Grantworthy advisor's role in choosing the Grant Service project?
It was a very solitary activity for me. And in my mind's eye now, I would love to be able to kind of like redo it where it's really, more of a group effort, where there's really buy-in from the Corps of Officers and you're not just acting alone. And in that time frame, all of the activities I was doing was really solitary. So to do this one, have this big decision to start everything off, I had to then bring that message to the group, and it just felt really like a huge amount of responsibility that was incredibly overwhelming. And I didn't know if I was up for it, prepared for it, worthy of it in every level. So it's just a really solitary activity. But like Colleen, you're saying about just having that passion for it, you're going to talk about it all year long. And as a Rainbow Girl, I've been at that time, I've been at, many events, listening to Grandma the Advisor after Grandma the Advisor. I can remember the speeches from when I was a 12-year-old listening to it, and every project. And actually, the link for me went back to the project we had when I joined Rainbow. And it was a ranch that's not too far here in the San Fernando Valley. And it was for handicapped children that's unfortunately no longer in existence. But doing a volunteer day, I got to have a direct impact with those children. And I think that just kind of stuck with me. So when you're kind of, at that time, I didn't have a binder, I didn't have Google, stone tablet with rocks, but it was just, it was a little overwhelming, but I felt a huge amount of responsibility. And then I'm competitive. So now it's all right, I'm going to get everybody behind this so that we can raise as much money as possible, and maybe raise the most ever, which we didn't, but it was a huge amount of money for that one small nonprofit. One of the things I love that our Grandma the Advisors get to do is you can select something that has a very direct community kind of impact, but you can also select something that's part of a larger nationwide or global kind of impact. And I just really like that, because a lot of small nonprofits like this year's Positive Teams, they're really region specific for where they're training, but then those human team members get to take those animals into different places, and then their word gets spread to other regions. So I love that opportunity to get a little bit of visibility for small nonprofit.
I also love how you said earlier, it is sort of one of the first decisions you make when you're appointed to be state president. And like you said earlier, Paula, it's a very surreal experience to even be in that situation. I was still in high school, so I'm like doing AP tests and all that kind of stuff and applying to college. And then all those plans suddenly change and you have this huge responsibility. And so many of the decisions we make are about the organization and thinking, how is this going to impact this organization that I care about and the membership, and are they going to like this? Are they going to be excited about that? But what was really nice about the Grant Service Project was it was a huge responsibility, but it was something that really felt like it was mine and my decision. And if I was going to care about it, then the organization would care about it. And it felt really comforting to know, because we're a service organization and all of us are here because we love service, that no matter what I picked, we were going to make a difference. Obviously, I'm also competitive, so it'd be great if we raised the most money and had the most impact. But at the end of the day, just knowing that there was going to be an impact, no matter how big or small, just made the decision so much more comforting.
What is it like being a teen and raising money for a cause that helps people? And how much did you raise for your Grant Service Project?
I'll jump in. It's really overwhelming. I think being a teen and you're just in high school, you're doing your thing, you're working with Rainbow Girls, you're working with whatever other extracurriculars you're doing. And then suddenly you're in a position where you really have the ability to raise thousands of dollars for an organization that you are passionate about. It's overwhelming. It feels like a huge responsibility, and it's also really exciting and motivating. And I remember feeling, even after my year, like how do I keep chasing that feeling of being useful in my community, of being purposeful in my actions. And so I think it's kind of been a guiding opportunity throughout my life, and something that has really motivated me to continue pursuing service in some way. And ultimately we raised, I believe the total we announced at Grand Assembly was a little over $68,000. And then we had a few more donations that came in at that time. So by the time we presented the final check, it was a little over $70,000. And I can't remember if you do the math, but our membership was a bit smaller back then. So if you did the math per capita, our girls raised a lot of money each, and they put in a lot of work. And just to know how much our members care about these projects is just inspiring. Every single one of our members is inspiring to me, and the service that they're doing for these organizations and for their communities. Whenever I think about it, it just really makes me feel very purposeful. And even as an alumni now, it makes me feel inspired.
I agree with the inspiration part. It starts out with so much of that overwhelming feeling, but you start to get yourself caught up in the momentum and the energy and excitement of how much money could we possibly raise? And at that time, I was not I didn't understand really what impact was. Like I'm thinking collision, I wasn't really understanding what an impact would be on an organization, but it was just like having the conversation with the founder, Liz Helms, of what would you do with money that we could potentially raise. And we share information with these organizations that there's potential for tens of thousands of dollars to be raised. And so they were talking about what they could do with that, and they did it, which was really impactful, and getting to see the results of it. We raised over $80,000 our year, and yes, we had more members, and we had, there were more assemblies, so there were OVs, several nights a week, official visits, where a check from an assembly would be presented, and that would get added to that total, but you don't know the running total all year long. So I would get so excited to open that envelope, on a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, and just keeping it in a ledger and almost forcing myself not to do math all year long. So I would be as surprised as everybody else in the room when we finally announced that number. And we have it on videotape of the founder of Ahead with Horses standing there and then dropping to her knees when the total was announced. And she was just a ball of energy anyway. You just could not do anything but love her. And she talked about the impact that this would have on those kids. And they had a horse named Rainbow. They had a rainbow corral built on the property so that the kids and the animals could kind of interact in the little Western space that they had. It was just phenomenal. It was supplies. It was an animal that could provide therapy to children. That was even more so. But I also wanted to say is because it was local for us, a lot of our assemblies were able to go over there and volunteer time. And I think even Jody, you were saying like later on as an adult, you were able to take some girls from, the last 15, 20 years to go over and volunteer because it's still in existence, thankfully. So it's still providing support to children, but it's also providing opportunities for volunteers. That now as an adult, all these years later, I try to make it to the demonstration day where the children who are students demonstrate the skills they've learned, and the parents are there cheering them on. I've invited friends, or I donate if I can't physically go to the event that year. So it's just wonderful to see the impact initially, but to see it over time as well is pretty amazing.
I also love, I don't think a lot of our members or even alumni realize that when we, the Grandworthy Advisors, get those checks at official visits or other events, we're responsible for those checks. We actually have to take them to the bank and deposit them and track them, and all that stuff is on the Grandworthy Advisor. There's so much work that happens in the background for these projects and everything that we're doing. And it's so tempting to try and like keep a tally and like know how much you're raising throughout the year. But I think the surprise factor is just so exciting. And like you said, Paula, the impact, BACC is a successful nonprofit as well, but it is a small nonprofit. So receiving a large lump sum donation from us can really be life-changing for these organizations and for the people that they're serving. There's such a direct impact that our Rainbow Girls have. And it makes me curious, Brianna, I'm curious if you see that, like as an active Rainbow Girl who's raising money for a Grand Service Project right now, how do you feel about it?
I know it's like very stressful to like, because I come from like a small assembly, even though in our area we're the biggest, or in our district we're the biggest. So it's hard for us since COVID to find like fundraisings for our Grand Service Project. But once we find out what the Grand Service Project is, we're like, okay, we need to start now. Like we start immediately for fundraisers. And then when we find out the total, it's so awesome. And I know last year at Grand Assembly, when I was on service court, I was down on the floor when we announced how much money we had for the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. And it was so like amazing.
How exciting.
And it's like exciting. So yeah.
Well, and I think it's important too, unfortunately, Rainbow's membership has fallen, but no donation is a small donation. The work that each of you is putting in to raise money does not go unseen. And I can speak for all the Grammarly advisors when I say how much we appreciate and see how much work you're doing on the ground to really do that. So it's just so exciting. I'm glad to hear that our membership is excited about it too.
Brianna,
sorry. I was just going to add, a few years ago, we had a big engagement with our alumni because there was a backpack drive. And I know we've done some other drives, but it stands out to me of the competitiveness, kind of bring it back in and we'll raise more. But it was a way for alumni who don't have an active participation in Rainbow right now, a way to participate, or if they're not even geographically near California Rainbow, but maybe they're on the East Coast or somewhere else, but maybe it's been a while since they've been involved, and it was a way for them to support. And it was amazing. And I think the organization was even just overwhelmed with the amount of backpacks that were donated. So it's so incredible to see the impact that our organization just here in California, not even looking internationally, but just how much money, how much engagement California Rainbow has had on nonprofits. It's pretty amazing.
Brianna, I want to turn that last question on you a little bit and ask you as a member, how does it feel? Like, do you feel that you have a huge impact as a teen being involved, not just raising money for the Grand Service projects, but even just doing service in your community?
I know it has a huge impact. And like just seeing people in general. Like this past weekend, we did our Civil War reenactment that we haven't had in 4 years. And we didn't have that many people, but we did have one specific guy that came both days from the other side, which is across the bridge, basically, to get to our side, just to buy food from us, even though we were selling the same thing on the other side. But since he was a Rainbow dad, he wanted to support us. And I know, like, we're doing food banks, even though the, like food drive's not going for, Grand Assembly or whatever. And so the advisor wants to make sure that we're doing any and every project possible. But like you girls, or you ladies, not girls, you ladies said, as a teen, it's hard to do, school and Rainbow at the same time. And for us, it's the same way. I'm a senior in high school and I'm trying to like finish high school plus do Rainbow. So it's a battle, but it's you try your best. So why it's important to find a good cause to support, and like how does this stay with you throughout your lifetime?
I think it's important to find a cause to support. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but in Rainbow, we talk a lot about service having healing power and really being this integral part of having kind of a well-rounded life. And I really do believe in that. I think when you help other people and you apply whatever special personal skills you have to help another cause, you can find a lot of healing for yourself and ultimately receive support back in ways that you might not have expected. And I think keeping that in mind has really been helpful. Like you mentioned, Brianna, COVID has been so hard on so many organizations and on us personally as people, that feeling useful again when we've been stuck in our houses and stuck on Zoom calls just feels really good to my soul. And I would hope that anyone who is struggling can help find some more relief through that and maybe find a network that can support them as well. And throughout your lifetime, I just really think serving others and finding a cause that you feel motivated by can just be really healthy and just really motivating for how you want to go throughout your life.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think, there's been a nice, really welcome shift in a lot more of the population in the last 20 years, of younger age being interested in giving back and getting involved in their community, or a local organization, whether it's through their employer, through their college, or those of us who serve in a Masonic youth group or a community group, we get involved. I think we're so fortunate that it started so young for anyone who's joined Masonic youth group. I think you get an opportunity to understand that you can be involved, you can give back. You don't have to wait till you have a job and a paycheck to have some kind of impact. And learning how to volunteer, learning that is then, oh my gosh, I love doing this. When I would talk to a friend about joining Rainbow way back when, that was what I talked about, is just, I like, doing service in the community, and I loved making bake sale items so that we could sell them when we were doing that, or serving a dinner, volunteering to read in a library or make little trade favors for those who were maybe in a recovery room or a nursing home. It made me feel like I was doing something that would impact someone else's life. And it started so young. And I just think that's something that's so different and special about our organizations. And I think it sticks with you. I don't necessarily work for a nonprofit now, but I have. And I know that my experience in Rainbow not only prepared me for it, made me a better employee for a nonprofit organization, but I made me passionate. I can't work someplace that I really don't wholeheartedly believe in their mission. It's really just something that I think a lot of us struggle with if you're in that kind of, it's just a job. And I think when we live this through Rainbow, when you do it as an adult, and it's a kind of a lifelong making an impact everywhere you can, you're doing it for your friends, you're doing it for your community, you're doing it for a cause, whether it's a personal connection to someone who's very dear to you, and you get behind that cause, or it's a personal impact to yourself, or it's just something that happens, or you come across and you just read a wonderful post about something, or someone saying, hey, I'm raising money for my birthday. I learned about Charity Water, I think it is, through that. One of our fellow past state leaders was doing that for her birthday and donate. And then I learned about the organization. And the more I learned about it, the more I just absolutely loved the mission. I love how they fundraise. I love how they, protect their program dollars and not spend it just on staffing. It really goes directly to program. So you start to pay more attention. Colleen mentioned earlier about Charity Navigator. It's a great tool to find charities that are really making an impact. When I get a phone solicitation, I say thank you so much, but I give locally to organizations I'm already familiar with, because I also know that those phone solicitations takes a chunk out of that donation. And I want that dollar to go directly to the program. I want it to go directly to the organization. When I got married recently, our gift list was just make donations to Ahead with Horses, my Grand Service Project, but also our local independent radio station, because it was kind of like, let's make an impact on something else. So I think you just, in Rainbow, you start to live it, and it never leaves you. You just continue to follow through with it, from when you're a teen to when you're not so much a teen, but maybe when you have teens who live in your house. And I love now watching my children being involved, finding ways to give back or to collect donations, to volunteer their time, and it becomes full circle.
I completely agree too. It's, I feel like every time I turn on the news, there's something bad happening in the world, and social media can be such a negative place sometimes, and you're getting all this sort of negative feedback. And in my personal life, I feel like I'm constantly having an existential crisis of what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I in the right career? Do I need to go back to school? Trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? And I don't have an answer to that. But when the world starts to feel overwhelming and those questions feel overwhelming, I know I can always come back to, I can help someone else. I can help this person. I can have that conversation. I can support this organization. and feel useful. And I think ultimately that's what a lot of people want, is to feel useful and impactful. And when you see that direct impact, like Paula was mentioning, it just feels healing. There's that feeling you get when you do pure service that's just for the good of someone else or some other organization and has no self-interest involved. That is just so cleansing and peaceful. And it's just nice to know that we as Rainbow Girls have experienced that through so much of our lives, and that we can always come back to that root and just find that healing. And I really think it's important for other people to find something like that for themselves as well, because it's such an overwhelming world. It's nice to know you have something to go back to, that it's not about you and you can just help someone else.
That's really beautiful. Well, I really thank you ladies so much for being on this podcast today. And if anybody feels inspired to go and serve your community and to find a cause that is near and dear to your heart, hopefully some of the suggestions and information that you heard on this podcast will inspire you to find a cause to serve. And thank you, Paula, and thank you, Colleen, for being our guests. And thank you, Brianna, for being our hosts. And thank you for joining us on Let's Talk About Leadership, Sisterhood, and Service. And we hope you stay tuned for more podcasts. Thank you.